I can hear noise coming from all kinds of places because it's so wonderfully quiet out here. Am I going to listen to more generators? And my real big question is, I thought I read on the state laws that the ADUs cannot exceed more than 50% of the square footage of the primary house. I just read that today.
That was the law, and I believe it's being changed January 1st.
Okay, so we need to clarify that because if we have the tiny home as the primary residence and two ADUs that go to it, and we have a 200-foot tiny home, we gotta look at what the implication, which takes me back to the well thought out plan, moving forward, but with careful thought. And then my last question is the off the grid section. I think we need to really look at that as a not standalone, but as a separate, well thought out section because based on what we're seeing of people that are coming from the base and they come and go and come and go, these will probably be rentals. And do we want to create, and I apologize to one of the residents behind me, do we want to create a place with a 3-car garage where they're storing their off-highway vehicles? And so we're inviting the potential of more crime because we don't have anybody living there, but we have a lot of expensive equipment stored. So these are just questions I think we need to, that's why I say a fact sheet, so that we're looking at what questions we've asked, we're asking our residents, what more do you have? We're definitely preparing to plan it, to give it to the council, but we're giving it to the council well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, it's evening now. Good evening, gentlemen. Mariah Dotson, Army veteran, community member of California City, and recent landowner in California City. My family has been in California City since 1970, so I'm sure they're all tuning in now. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. This is 3 years later, so it's so exciting to see this progress that is here within our hands. You know, shout out to DJ for what he's done and all the hard work. California City needs this. This is very progressive and it will attract the right types of people. We have the opportunity to tap into the base. They're at maximum capacity over there. They're looking for solutions. So environmental friendly, minimalist entrepreneurs are what this is going to attract. The right types of people to California City. This is what we need. I definitely recommend that you guys adopt this, get it into the ordinance, and pull the trigger. Thank you guys.
Can I say something?
Not yet.
A positive thing? SDI Tracks has a special fund that can tap into for upgrading the infrastructure.
Only roads and water.
Roads and water.
There's your paved roads and water.
Only on one track. Can't do it on tracks that are not SDI.
I know, but you can at least do the one. Yes.
Raj Million. I think tiny homes are a great idea, and it's going to bring the right kind of people here, and it's going to make California City grow the right way. I hope the roofing is not restricted to certain materials. You know, there's solar tiles that come out. There's so many neat roofing materials, so I hope that's not restricted, but made to look nice. As far as water tanks, I have homes in other counties. For example, Riverside County, in unincorporated Riverside County, they have water tanks that are fire hydrants that are 5,000 gallon aluminum or fire hydrants. Basically, it's a big giant 5,000 gallon water tank. It's not elevated. It does have a hookup for when a fire truck comes, because when there's a fire truck is going to come with water in the truck already. And that's for when they run out of water or they need more water, then they're going to hook up to that tank and hook up their hose to it and put out any fires from there. It's not elevated, doesn't need to be elevated, just needs to have a hookup, and it works just fine. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel and do extensive research when there's already something out there that works really well. We just have to implement it the right way. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Real quick on that. Yeah, I understand the fact. I know what a tender is, and you'll pull from a water source. However, it'll require to be sprinkled. So you need to have a gravity feed in order for the sprinklers to work.
Yeah, but then,
So it has to be elevated. You can't go from the ground up without a pump.
well, in that case, you'll have a little pump that's going to be run on
Electricity.
battery operated, or, solar, which is battery operated, electricity, but, there are pumps that work on 12 volts and whatnot that can, be put into action, to supply the water sprinklers, but still, you don't need to raise, the tank.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? First round. Okay, commissioners, comments? Discussion, or you wanna go straight to action?
Straight to work.
Action, which is what we need to do tonight.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's up to you.
Let's go to the issue.
I'll take us on to set.
Yeah, let's go straight through.
Straight to action?
Yes.
All right, so what's your pleasure?
What is that box here?
What's your pleasure?
Well, I think that, from my own opinion, I think that the tiny homes are something that it seems like most everybody wants. They think it's gonna bring, prosperity to Cal City and bring a lot of people. I think our focus though initially should be on one segment of the town, not the overlays that are, there's 9 overlays, I believe, and maybe more with the second city. And I don't think that is the way to go to try to cultivate all 9 of them at one time. I think if we focus on one and put our energy into that one and see how that goes, and then expand from there. So I think the action that we would need to take would be just to focus on the one parcel, and offhand, I'm just thinking of the parcels down there, 2630, 2223, and 2404. Because if we want to attract people from Edwards, which I think would be the initial thing we'd want, is to get people that are living on the base now, or they're renting a big house that they don't need, they would probably, want a tiny home, but who's gonna build it?
That's not for us to decide.
No, I know that. Say, are they gonna just pop up like mushrooms and then people could go and live in them? Cause somebody has to spend the money, and I don't think that if the people at the base are gonna wanna spend $50,000 or $80,000 to build a tiny home that they're only gonna live in for,
Actually, what you're talking about now is our next subject,
okay.
so.
I'm ahead of myself.
Yeah, you are a little bit, because we're gonna talk about which tracks to actually identify next.
Okay,
Next
so I'll be
subject.
quiet.
So, on this one, we just needed action to direct staff on what to do.
Okay,
So I think, my personal opinion, and then jump in whenever you decide, my personal opinion is with corrections that can be made tonight to the ordinance that was put forth with the resolution, notify the public hearing, or notice the public hearing for our next, planning commission meeting. I think, and still, at that same time, when the public hearing comes, we can still make changes on the fly. So if something should happen to come up with some other residents that come forward, that may not have been able to be here tonight, that maybe some of us didn't think about, we can always incorporate it some way, somehow. So, you got anything to add to that?
I wanna add that, I think that with the ordinance, I think we're gonna need 2, one for the ADUs and one for the tiny homes.
Right.
Otherwise, it'll be a big mess.
The public hearing is only gonna be on tiny homes.
Okay, all right.
ADUs are state law.
Right, no, I
So-
got that, but if somebody builds a tiny home and says, well, I wanna rent part of the 3-car garage out as an ADU, but then what?
Actually, they can, it's a junior ADU, technically. Don, you
Yeah,
have anything to add?
And item number 4 is the ADU,
I'm sure
the
that
drafted
there'll be some
ordinance.
residents,
Yeah, I know.
wherever you said to put this, the residents be objective to having the tiny homes there.
Yeah.
Well, the-
Yeah, the mail outs.
So they move it in,
With the mail resolution. Because it's noticed public hearing.
2812, and maybe that's their home, so we are notified them ahead of time. How
they feel about it.
Right, but that's actually the next subject we're gonna talk about, which tracks to actually select. This one, we're just gonna say, okay, so since we came up with an idea, we put it forth, public second time around, 2 minutes only. Anybody wanna jump up and speak? 3, 2, 1, done. Go ahead.
Real quick, Matt pointed out that right now we're just working on the ordinance, and the property owners will be notified once the zone change is, brought forward.
Right, that's
once
a
the
whole
ordinance-
separate process.
Correct.
Yeah.
Roger Million, so, to talk about where, not to restrict, a certain parcel, a certain area, because who owns it, you know,
That is next section. That's our next discussion.
so is this the new idea?
All we're doing here is directing staff on the public hearing. On this one
On the
right here,
ordinance.
our next discussion item is on which tracks to actually talk about.
Okay, got it. I'll come up later.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I just wanna clarify, your next planning commission meeting is January 7th?
That, as far as my memory goes, yes.
Okay, and what you're talking about now is a notice of a public hearing at the planning commission on January 7th
That is correct.
for tiny homes only.
Yes, ma'am.
Lou Peralta, California City. When this thing first broached, I thought it was a great idea. However, upon heavy thinking, I'm wondering if we all have looked at the potential for sale of these homes, keeping in mind where we are and where we live. I see millennials jumping at this, but not in California City. I see the people in the service, Air Force, working there. I think that would be a good sell. And if you can build them and depend on them, I think it's a pretty good idea. But I don't think we can market this to the general public or to the people who are looking to downsize. Because if they are going to buy a house here in California City, there has to be more infrastructure than we have right now. You're not gonna get a couple in their 20s and 30s to come out and live here on a tiny home, unless they really love the desert. There's a lot of us that do. But if they're trying to save money on a home, they're not gonna come to California City because they probably work in the city and the suburbs. They have jobs, they got traffic, they gotta go every morning to, whether they take the bus or the car. So we ought to sit down as a city and really think of how are we gonna market this before you go through all the trouble of going through all this dissertation that you've just gone through today and then you're gonna go in the future. I personally think it was a great idea when I heard about it 2 years ago. And in retrospect, I'm thinking, how are we gonna sell this to the people who probably one of these days will make enough money to buy a regular home, but right now they're struggling. So they're working somewhere. Again, keeping aside the people who may be at the Air Force Base, which that's a good sale. But other than that, I think we're fighting a battle to try to sell these homes to people, just a regular Joe and Jane that wants to buy a home, they wanna own something, but they can't afford a nice big house, so they have to buy the small one to come to California. That's my problem, that's the way I see it. I don't know how you guys have given it a lot of thought. What the marketing value is gonna be, how you're gonna approach the marketing, who you're gonna reach, how you're gonna get out to reach them. I guess it's not the city's problem, although it should be, but it's the investors and the people, developers who are doing this. If they feel comfortable in building 10, 15, 20, 30 little tracks like this, then fine, they'll do it. But I think it's a big battle. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else second time around?
Several months ago, we had a meeting with the tiny home representative.
I can't hear you, Don.
We had a tiny home representative give a meeting several months ago. And all the people who were there, not all of them, had homes here. And everybody was agreeable to having the tiny homes put in. It seemed to think it was a good idea.
I just wanted to let you folks know we're on early deadlines this week, so we need the notice tomorrow or it won't be able to get into the 26th paper if we're going to press on Thursday, so just.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, sir. All right, no more from the public. So, we in agreement that they will notice a public hearing for 7 January on tiny homes and bring forth a draft ordinance and resolution?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. This item's done. For now. Okay, tiny homes, potential rezoning areas, which we kind of wandered off into here and there on the last one. Staff,
Okay, so this is just a few areas that we've determined with the help of DJ and the tracks that would be the best locations for tiny homes at this time. This is a map of the central city. You can see most of these tracks, actually all the tracks are on the outside of the city with exception to the Legends and the mobile home park here. We put those in for your consideration. This is the first track I'm going to talk about is 2898. This is actually an SDR tract. I was mistaken. So this does have funds to get paved, have utilities run in, and I'll send you the section of the municipal code that gives all the description of what the SDI tract will get you. This also has, there's no homes in this tract currently. There is no water in the tract, but there is a water line on Mitchell. And then there is also no sewer in the tract currently. The sewer line runs along the river. This is a photo that we took today of the tract. It's pretty much all the roads, but again, this is an SDI tract, so that kind of is almost a game changer for this one. The next tract is 2528. This is the tract directly below the city-initiated zone change. That we changed all this from commercial to manufacturing for cannabis, and then a strip of commercial right in the north section. There are 9 existing homes in each one of these 8. These are eighths of a section. The northeast quarter of the quarter section does not have any homes, so that could be a potential pilot area if you want to keep it in an area that has infrastructure. There is water in this tract, and there is sewer. This is looking south west towards the existing homes. 2812, this is the track that was leading last time that staff got direction to move forward looking into further. We went ahead and looked into all the tracks just to give you an idea of what each one brings to the table. This one, let's see, it has no homes in the tract currently. There is water in the tract, and there's sewer near the tract as well on the perimeter.
There's no water.
Oh, there's no water?
There's water lines there,
Okay.
but they got shut off a few years
So
ago.
there are currently water lines, but they are shut off.
But they wouldn't be used.
Okay. Our public works director said they'd be useless at this point. This is an example of the desert mix on one of the roads that goes through it. This road is actually in pretty good shape, but that's only because there's not that much traffic going down. If you look at other roads in the area, you can see what the traffic will do to the desert mix, so they would have to be improved. These are the 2 tracks that are in the city and already, this would be considered the most infill of any tracks. The first one we'll talk about is the Legends. Bottom here, this is California City property, and it's governed, or it's run by the housing, not authority. Okay, so it's run by the housing authority currently. There are, I believe, 5 or 6 homes right here existing, as well as one up here, and then there's some multi-unit existing as well. This area has pretty much all the amenities. So there is water, obviously, sewer is there as well, and a community center is planned to be built in the location.
And the tiny lots.
They are also tiny lots. Here's a map of those tiny lots right now. However, the plan is to merge these So we could get creative on how the tiny homes were aligned, since it is a city-run tract. Right. There is only one owner for all these lots. The second one in the infill area that I'm going to discuss is the mobile home park, and it's pretty much there's several mobile homes that are decrepit that have been pulled out, so that leaves gaps that could be filled in by tiny homes. Here's an example. So you can just stick it right in there. We could also allow wheels in this, a little maybe lax on the architectural standards, just some ideas from staff. Now moving to the southeast corner of the city. This is track 223. And I was told by the lead water operator, or the chief water operator, that these do have water in them. There's no homes in this tract currently, but there's no sewer. So these would be ideal for off-the-grid type tiny homes. This is currently what it looks like today. Yep. It's obviously water. Built-in swimming pool.
I'll start building tomorrow.
It's a bird sanctuary.
What's that?
It's a bird sanctuary.
A bird sanctuary.
The next one I'm going to talk about is 2630. It's very similar to 223, there, except there is a little section that fronts Cal City Boulevard. This is on the edge of the city. There is water, but no sewer, and there's no current homes in the tract. It's a little drier, but looks similar to the other tracts. It also has desert mix on a lot of the roads. And 2404 is a small tract. It's very close to the butte down there, between the, I guess that'd be the North Butte or the Twin Buttes. Additionally, it does have water, but no sewer as well, and no existing houses, except for this foundation. And this is actually technically in the tract next to it, but this is kind of an example of what you're working with. And then finally, 2530, this tract really spans the very south part of the city. This is the Cache Creek flood area. However, Sequoia, it does act as a type of dike, so you can't, or hopefully it wouldn't flood like some of the other areas. And there is water in there. It's possibly disconnected though. I'm not sure exactly about this area. And there's no sewer or existing homes. And that's what it looks like. So this is this is taken from the side of the butte. You can see there's very open, few sparse roads, city in the background, but this is where you would expect to see, and hopefully, a bunch of little tiny homes. So we, as staff, we would like direction on which tracts to include in the tiny home resolution and ordinance. We have been directed in the previous item. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any questions of staff? Or general comments?
Questions or directions?
Ask questions first, we'll go to directions at the end.
Okay, of these, I think there's 9 overlays, is that correct?
Yes, and you can also discuss the potential of the second community.
Oh,
We
okay.
didn't put that in here tonight, but you're more than welcome to
All right.
speak to it.
So what do you see potentially for the right lower corner?
2404.
2404, 2223, 2630, those three plots there.
Yes.
If we made them all, what do you think about the potential of that? You said there's water there.
Yeah, according again to the lead water operator, the chief water operator, they do have water down there. This, however, that you could still build these off grid, so they wouldn't have an AVAC fee potentially to pay. The city wouldn't have to meter their water, and as long as the fire hydrants have water to them, you wouldn't have to worry about the water tanks. So that's
If I could, I have to verify, but in tracks like that, if we have steel pipes in the ground, we'd be better off capping those pipes off. If we allow tiny homes in those tracks, then the lots could just be used for tiny homes and they could do a storage tank for water. And that way we don't have to deal with, water line breaking in those tracks, if they're made out of steel. If they're ACM or something like that, which is a little more durable and rarely have brakes on, then we could, provide water meters, and then it'd be worth it to actually provide water to those lots. But if it is steel in those tracks, if eventually we make those tiny home tracks, I think that's better for the city as far as water and maintenance and stuff like that. Just something to think about.
On those tracks.
No, there are no homes, except for that one
There's nothing
foundation.
over there. Maybe Rabbit.
No, there was no power. Oh, there's no power. It was completely down here.
I'm gonna ask
You wanna
if
talk to
they-
that?
Do they have any recommendations?
Um,
You guys have any, does the planning department
No.
have any kind of recommendation of what overlay is the most,
Yeah, we like 2012, as we were discussing before, and then since 28,
you like
Two-
which one?
2812,
2812?
yeah, 2812, and then 2898, since it's an SDI tract, I would recommend that as well.
And may I ask why?
Since it's an SDI tract, we have funding set aside to pave those roads. I mean, that answers that question, and then as well as the infrastructure, I believe. I'll get you all the details of what the SDI, what an SDI tract means.
Don't those tracks have a greater potential to becoming cannabis use tracks at some point in the future as opposed to the ones down on the right?
Yes, absolutely, but
Because there's,
taking that into consideration, that would, if you have people living up here and working the cannabis, they'd have a very short commute and thus a very, much
well,
lower
it's not
impact on
that long a
infrastructure.
commute if you're gonna go from there to the corner. I mean, what is it,
Golf cart.
3 miles?
Yeah,
But I think the potential of going from there to Cal City Boulevard, heading to the 58, if you're working at the base,
Right, yeah, if you're focusing on military, obviously these are your,
I think that's gonna
Spots.
have to be the initial focus. Because like Lou said, you're not gonna get millennials to come out here and, if they're working in LA or wherever,
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think
well,
millennials would come up
what do
here.
you think?
With the land, with the affordability, in California City, I mean, I enjoy it here.
You work here,
Right.
so
Kinda
how far do you live from the city hall?
5
1
minutes.
mile?
But yeah, but
Maybe.
if they work on base, exactly, that'd be a great location. Or if they're working in the cannabis industry, again, I know we have several people that are coming into town from new developments, and they are looking for housing.
Right. I just, personally, I feel that section over there, which DJ gave me a tour of, and it looks like the potential is nothing unless we go with something like tiny homes. There's nothing gonna happen out there.
Yeah, nothing's been built there since
And the fact that it has,
carved out.
the fact that it's accessible to California City Boulevard heading south, and which would be, access to the base. And if people are working on the other end of town by the airport, in cannabis, and they need a place, it's not that far away. It's what, 3 miles? 4 maybe? Anyhow, that's all I have to say.
Don, do you have anything?
I don't have anything.
All right, I don't have anything now. I'm gonna let the public speak. 3 minutes, folks.
This is Rick Ward. Being a new thing, you should be looking at cost efficiency. Remember, houses are still going for $100,000, so what are you gonna sell one of these for on a piece of dirt? 25,000, lots worth about 5 to 10,000. Your cost to put it in there with utilities is gonna exceed that, so you're not gonna sell it. I would definitely recommend, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna walk over to the map. I would definitely recommend utilizing this one because you got the costly infrastructure to be paid for by the SDI. Utilizing this one for senior homes, which we do need because the designated projects are all filled up. There are 5,000-foot lots or smaller, so you can actually at least just put one tiny home on it and increase the growth for potential seniors. And I would say, even though it is a mobile home park, maybe we can change this over slowly but surely to tiny home park because it has the sewer and stuff. this is gonna cost a lot of money to develop, this is gonna cost a lot of money to develop. This should be left open for future homes, and actually, this 2812, you should consider that because of all the large growth that are gonna be on the boulevard, on Norelia Boulevard. So are people gonna wanna build 1,500 square foot houses, 2,000 square foot houses next to a growing place? So just looking at the potential, keeping the cost of the city, you can always add tracks later. But you want to get this thing off the ground with the least cost and expense to whoever's gonna develop it. That's all I gotta say, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lou Peralta, California City. Rick, you almost had it right.
Yeah, I'm close.
I would spend all my time, money, and effort, and the $3 million that I have to develop the city, to develop Legends.
There you go.
Legends is the primary spot in the whole city that you can do it quickly. You have a street going in there, streets around it. You got the lots delineated, you have water there, you have fencing all the way around it. It's perfect. That's the number one spot that I would concentrate and spend all my time developing it. Yes, sir.
Don't you already have residential living there though?
Well, yeah, I don't know how they would feel about it. That's another discussion. But you know what? They may be all right, and especially if you sell it to the elder folks that want to sell their homes in the Woodland Hills area and in Orange County and take out $700,000 to $800,000 for their home and live in a nice place for 50, 60 grand. I think that's a good place to start. Secondly, like Rick said, it's 2898 because it's an SDA track and you have access to water and some road work. And those are the two that I would really concentrate on to start with and see what happens. Again, I'm kind of leery a little bit about how you market this thing, but if you start with the base and the older folks, I think the Legends is the perfect spot. Thank you.
Good evening, Mary Trumbull. I have a question about the Legends. The people that live in those, I think it's 4 or 5 homes, as you come into the Legends, that if they put in the tiny homes, it's not gonna affect those folks, is it?
Affected as far as what?
They're gonna be able to stay in their
Oh,
homes.
absolutely. Yeah, we're not
But
gonna
they're
tear
renting
anything down.
those, or at least one lady is.
No, we're not gonna tear anything down or evict anybody.
Chairman,
All right.
sorry, just as a point of clarification, we really shouldn't be talking about tracks 6388 and track 3151. Those lots are already exempt for the 1,200 square foot requirement because of the size of the lots.
They're PUDs.
Yeah, so those, we shouldn't even be discussing those two lots. If someone wanted to put a 800 square foot house on 3151 right now, they could. So we should just exclude those and
It's
not.
not even part of the discussion.
Okay, Karen Macedonio, I want to clarify. Joe, you just said 6388 and 3151 are already unique animals?
Yeah, they're already, the lots are so small, they're exempt from the 1,200 square foot requirement. And our municipal code is not specific to, I mean, the 3151, I believe is, the exact words are, because of the size of the lot, you can allow a single wide, but it doesn't give you exact square footage. So someone could come in and argue that I wanna build a 600 square foot home, and I don't know how we would keep them from doing that, based off the municipal code. So I'm just saying to save time, let's not discuss those two tracks right now.
Okay, so 6388 and 3151 become a parking lot issue for a further discussion. But then the 2898, the SDI track, what actual benefit to the city? That builds our infrastructure.
It would increase it, yes.
All right, and that lets us tap into the money that would otherwise be inaccessible to us.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's a
As
big,
far as I know.
okay,
But
so
we-
that's a
we
big
can always
draw.
get clarification on that, yes.
And clarification. And then I'm thinking of the gentleman to my right, with the original idea is to make land use of something that doesn't have the ability to be useful now.
Bingo.
So that brings me to the 3 lots on CCB, or the 3 tracks on CCB South, 2223, 2630, and 2404. Do we want to look at those as a single section not a single part, single tract, but a single section where we're trying to make a land use change. So those are my questions.
Christy Munt, I really like the fact that I'd like to see the Legends become seniors tiny homes, but that's another thing in the future. 2898 sounds, reasonable, because we have the SBI for infrastructure there. I don't agree with 2812, because I believe it's too close to the high school. And I think it would be more for residential, single-family homes for kids going to the high school, they would hope so. The three in the corner, 2630, 2223, and 2404. Yes, there are many leaks out there for water. I walked out there for 4 years before they turned the water off, and I was constantly calling in and saying there's another leak. They finally turned it off. But there is water there. It is also, I think, one of the best areas to look at because there are no homes in that area. You're not going to affect anybody. You're not even, I mean, I live at 99th and Redwood, and Conklin, Conklin is that little red street. Can you point to it? Right there, yeah, that's Conklin. And even on that side, there's no houses in that area. There's a couple of churches right on Redwood, but other than that, there's no houses even in that area. There's some on the west side of Conklin, but not anywhere east. And so, like I said, I walk out into that area just about every day, and all the way down to Sequoia. And there are asphalt roads there. They're not totally gone, even, some areas they are, but they're not. But I think that would be between those three down in the corner, like you said, there's access to Cal City Boulevard for people at the base, and the 2898 for the cannabis industry. I think that would be a great place for workers of the cannabis industry to have tiny homes. So that's mine.
Chairman Creighton and Commissioners, I'd like to draw your attention to the draft ordinance that I handed you. In section 1, you'll see, whereas the city of California City has approximately 100 residential tracts located in the city's jurisdiction, most of the tracts outside the existing developed core areas lack available electric power. Many of the tracts lack available city water delivery. Because of this lack of infrastructure, there's no immediate identifiable use. I'm going to ask a very important question of you all. Of the 11 proposed tracts, do you have a good reason why you would omit any of them? Knowing that there are 47,000 other properties that are remote, vacant, uninhabited, why you would be so careful to omit any of these 11 tracts that have no power, no identifiable use, and we're sticking it to them with general taxes, and we're sticking it to them with parcel taxes to provide our police and service, but you don't want them to be able to use the property. Think about what you're discussing here tonight. With respect to the tiny homes district that we've presented to you on page 9, I'll draw your attention to the table 4 again. An 800 square foot smaller home that meets all the state building codes, great, give me a permit. If I want to build a 400 square foot tiny home in one of these districts, great, give me a permit. Why would you omit any of those? There's no good reason. There's no other identifiable use on planet Earth. You can't make up something. We have 47,000 other empty ones that you can focus on your planning. Let's give property owners some perceived potential benefit for hanging in there 75,000 years before we come up with something.
That's all. 75,000 years.
Raj Millian. So I own several properties out here, and I don't own something in those tracts. And if I were to say, okay, I want to build a tiny home in those tracts, I would have to try to go out there and purchase it. And if you restrict it to just one area, then the price of that goes up. It's hard to purchase it. So what I'm requesting is allow those potential 11 tracks to go through, and don't restrict the growth and the future of California City. You know, let the potential of whoever can build in whatever area, let it happen. Let the future happen, because it's hard if you restrict it. So please, my request is let those 11 tracks go through and let us see what happens with that. It's a good start. Thank you.
Anybody else? Round one. Commissioners?
I think we have the same dilemma that we always end up having, where we're not doing any infill. Somebody wants to build a house here, and someone wants to build one over there, and one over here, and we don't create any neighborhoods. All we do is create houses that are scattered throughout the desert. And I think if we focus on one overlay area first, deal with that, see how it goes. If it's just everybody's going crazy, they wanna buy tiny homes, then the rest, they're gonna be available. It's not like we're gonna say, no, you gotta hold off. If we see that it's working, but I don't think to go and start building tiny homes on all the overlay areas is, feasible for one thing, and it doesn't really bring anything to the city. That's all I have.
I agree with that.
I can see benefits both ways, but I don't. You know, we said it with cannabis, and it kind of got us in trouble. If we jump in, we need to jump in with both feet. And we are kind of in a predicament as a result of that. I don't want to really do spotlight building. We got killed on that before by not requiring neighborhoods. On my street, there's 8 houses and 32 lots. So, there's a lot of infill there. But, so, personally, I'd like to see a couple of tracks for, identified solely for off-grid and a couple for on-grid. I definitely would like to see 2898 as it is SDI. You can get all utilities in there. Electric's in the area as well, or will be very soon. I don't see the reason why we can't not discuss 6388 or 3151, because they're already tiny lots. So why can't I put a 200 square foot home on there? So I could still theoretically put a tiny home on there. And that's what we're talking about, putting them somewhere.
Well, you already could do that, so.
Yes, I understand that. So I don't understand why we can't already make that an RTH.
No, but okay, you could include it, but it's already.
Yeah, I understand that it's exempt from the minimum building requirement, I understand that. But I don't see why that should be off our table for discussion.
No,
It should be.
I just meant take it off the table tonight, but when you do the ordinance, you would add those two automatically since the lots are so small, and that's what I meant.
Right, but the part of the discussion here tonight is we're either all in or we're partially in. So it's either going to be, we as a small group, need to direct staff to go all in on all of these. By the way, if we decide to do this, if we get the districts rezoned or prior to, that's a hell of a lot of mailing. Every one of those parcel owners has to be notified. So that's gonna cost the city some money. Plus, we're gonna have to pay to have it all rezoned. So we need to look at the cost, and I don't know what the cost estimate for that's gonna be. Do you guys? Any idea?
Is it $1 an address?
What's the stamp?
Well,
142, it's 142.
No, but still, we have to pay to actually rezone it. We have to pay to file the ordinances. We have to pay to do the general plan amendment and all that other stuff. So that's also a cost to the city.
Chairman, if I could just, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but I actually thought about that, and the way I looked at it was, that'll be great advertising. when we send a letter out to each one of these property owners and let them know what we're thinking about doing, they're gonna call and they're gonna inquire, and I'll gladly take all those phone calls, and I will tell them, hey, what we're trying to do is make your land more valuable. And that way at least they're aware of it as well. One thing I was thinking about was, if you just pick one tract, like let's just say for example, 2812, and as a developer, if I wanted to come in and build a tiny home to see what the market's like, it would be really difficult for me to reach out to those property owners. A lot of them are out of state, they're out of the country, things like that. So I just think we shouldn't limit ourselves if we're gonna increase the potential of the land in our city. I just wanted to throw that.
Second call for public. Trying to see if some people chomping at the bit.
Rick Warren, I'm going to go to the map again.
Sure.
No utilities, no power, nothing but another SDI track. It can be paid for, and this needs to be researched just to follow up on it. Just like this one, by the SDI money. $84 million is in the fund.
How about people living there, Rick?
There's nobody living there.
Nobody
This is
there.
all dirt right here. It's all dirt. All you got is the high school with these 4 tracks here right going to the high school that no one's ever gonna build up. And this here is a drainage ditch that separates the two, but this at least has power coming down and it could be expanded out. I'm looking at a way not to cost the city. Give it a potential growth. Add that to it. Do all of them, and do the other ones out there towards the, second community. I mean, instead of adding it to later, that'd be, do them all. See if anybody actually hits. What if they don't do nothing? It'd still be dirt. That's all I got.
We'd estimate the mail out cost for 2812 to be about $900.
So let's assume it's about the same for all the trash. Just a general figure, okay, thank you.
So, 10,000.
Roughly, yeah.
I think it would be very strategic thinking if you were to do all of them. Why? Because you think about the target market is not just 6388. The target market is not just 3151.
Never said it was.
No, yes, sir. No, I completely understand. Just thinking strategically, really focusing on the base, but having those opportunities and leveraging marketing towards the military.
Exactly.
As the leverage and the base and the foundation for tiny homes. I do believe it would bring a lot of momentum in the California city.
I have my own thoughts on that. I'm retired military, I've lived in base housing a lot, so.
Listening with great interest to some of the comments that were made, talk about branding and attracting potential users, whether it be workers in cannabis or military, trying to go after millennials. What we're doing tonight is discussing the possibility of actually having land use policy that folks can identify with properties in California City to have a smaller home or a tiny home. This is important, that otherwise is prohibited on properties that otherwise are prohibited from getting a real estate loan because there's no power. So on one hand, you have all the prohibitions, which is why we have nothing, why we've only had 15 homes built in 10 years, because the cost of building is more than the market value. And many of the infills lot don't have power, some do, many don't. And the market is saying no, universally no. Where with branding for smaller homes and tiny homes off the grid, we actually have something that can attract people to California City. If you look at the table on page 9, table 4, once again, you'll see that tract, for example, 2404, 2461, they're only 200 units. It's not going to cost $900. In fact, I've added the total number of units at 6,000. It doesn't mean 6,000 tiny homes. It means possibly in the next several decades, Maybe a couple hundred single-family homes are built larger than 1,200 feet. Maybe a few hundred smaller homes less than 1,200 feet. That's what it means. You're making this way bigger problem than it needs to be. And you're missing the biggest opportunity we've ever had, is to be unique and special and actually attract people to our community based on the incredible opportunity that every one of the tracks I've identified for you is recorded. It's engineered. The streets are already designed. We don't have to wait 10 years to make all that happen. We lack vision. This is our opportunity to include a superior vision in land use policy, go to the universe with 11 tracks that otherwise, if you ask Sean Monk, I promise you he'll tell you there's not more than 9 homes in all 11 tracks. I think 3 of them burned down. There's not going to be any other land use, and you're a planning commission, you ought to be looking at creating land use. Thank you for your time.
Christy, just one last comment. We need this in our city. We need to think forward. This is going to be the wave of the future. Too many people are either downsizing or, as the majority of the millennials in the X generation, they don't want to be tied down for 30 years to a mortgage. And they want to be able to travel and see the world. And this way they can own a small home and still be able to do the things they want to do. So yes, we need to be green. We need to be as many things off the grid as possible. So California, every house out here should have solar panels on the roof. And, but yeah, we need to just open it up. I know it's taken us 4 years now almost for the cannabis industry to get going, but we've got, as you said, 75,000 years of nothing happening, so we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Raj Millian. I want to say that I strongly disagree that there is a certain age bracket that this is going to cater or not cater to. I think there's going to be, I can promise you that there's going to be a wide range from the young to the old that will love tiny homes, that do love tiny homes. It's a movement, it's a thought, and it's a lifestyle. People are going to love it from all ages. So it's not like millennials are not going to like it. That's untrue. A lot of millennials love it. It's a huge movement in other countries, in other places. And people all ages come and stay in these places. They want a simple lifestyle. They will commute to the city area to work and come back and live in a place where you're not sticking your head out the window and you're into your neighbor's yard. They need some space in between. So you don't want a place that's so constricted, house after house after house right next to each other. They don't want wall-to-wall living where if you knock on your own wall, your neighbors can say, hey, keep it down. You know, they would want some space in between the houses. So age-wise, all ages are going to do it. They're going to love tiny homes. And these tracks are well thought out. They're not randomly out there. You know, there's been research that has been done into this. We've traveled and looked at these properties. It's important that not one tract is chosen, but a multitude of tracts are, you know, all these tracts out there are great choices. So that's my request once again. Please allow these. Don't restrict it. Allow the growth and the future of California City. Don't restrict it. Thank you.
Karen Macedonia. I'm going to make the assumption that everybody that's spoken is right. And Rick Warren has identified a second SDI tract. But did I hear that we can only access SDI funds for one tract? Or we can access for more?
No,
All right, so
as far as I
then,
know, there's money for all SDI tracks.
okay, so we could if we've got 2, we can access funds for 2, which is a huge benefit to the city. DJ and Raj, you're talking about, let's just open it up and go to all of it. Chairman Creighton, you came down to we needed to look at the cost. I'd really like to see a spreadsheet with costs and benefits so that we're looking at factual, not just opinions. What's it gonna cost us for mailing for 6,500 lots? What is the SDI funds that we hope to be able to access? What is the benefit to the city of that additional infrastructure? It's gotta be huge. Let's look at some numbers here, not just opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Final thoughts, commissioners, and we're gonna tell staff what to do.
Okay, you know, after listening to DJ, who I respect because of his knowledge, it's deja vu. This is the marijuana industry 4 years ago. We're missing a huge opportunity. We gotta grow marijuana. We have to develop marijuana. We need to grow houses. It's gonna bring billions of dollars to Cal City. How much have we got so far? 25,000 or so? I don't know the number, but it's the same thing. We can't just go crazy and say, yeah, we need to have tiny homes over on 2889, 2528, all over the city. We don't need that. No more than we need the cannabis the way it's gone. We've got cannabis on Neuralia, we've got cannabis out at the airport, we've got cannabis over on Menborough. I mean, we need to be smart about this. Go into it where we can control it. Yes, DJ is right. We've got land out here that has just been here for 75,000 years and it's not doing anything. But we can't just go and say, let's develop this area and that area. This is SDI, so we'll get money for that. Let's develop the area that is going to be least used by, businesses or regular houses. And I think, focusing on that, and then we can say, okay, we did pretty good there, let's go to the next one. And it may take 10 or 20 years. Cal City's been here since 1965, and they haven't done any of that. So, and we see the city, the way it's a hodgepodge of residents, apartment houses, gas stations, liquor stores. There supposedly was a grand plan at some point in the past. Wherever the grand plan went, it doesn't look very apparent to me that it settled where it should have. But anyhow, that's just my opinion, so I will be quiet.
I think we ought to look at the mobile home parks. They've already got paved roads in there, and lots of room. I live in a mobile home park off of Ransford, and if I had the money, I'd have a tiny home. My wife would probably object to it.
Your wife is disagreeing right now.
You're not gonna be having a tiny home whether you have all the money in the world.
Just call nobody to come home.
Somebody's gonna have to give me a ride home, I think.
Okay, I really don't have any final thoughts. I've listened to everybody talk, and I'm mentally kind of torn on this. Initially, I wanted to see 1 or 2 tracks for on-grid, 1 or 2 tracks for off-grid. I fear that we will end up the same way the city is now, and we will have spot lot building. City this size, with so few people, is probably inevitable. Last meeting, I gave my opinions on what I thought would happen with tiny homes, but that's just my opinion. I'll vote the way I feel the city should go, but I caution the city on this too. And this is, what we're gonna do is we're just saying yes or no to the identified tracks. I think maybe we should look at that second SDI track that Rick identified. It's very close to my home, but it's not across the street from mine, it's not infill. It's a wide open area, I walk the dogs there pretty often, so. It'd be interesting to see having that right on North Loop.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see. Gentlemen, what do we want to tell them? all in or just a few? And if you have just a few, you better identify them. All in, Don?
I'm all in.
Yeah. Bingo.
I have to go with the ones that are down in the corner,
So you're saying just the southeast?
those, yeah, the southeast,
Alright, well, that does,
2630, 2223, and 2404.
I would agree with that for off-grid only, but then I was looking at the northwest too, so, I'm gonna go with Don, I'm gonna say all in. Everything in First Community is identified, but we are not acting on this until after the ordinance is done.
Yes, you don't have to decide tonight.
Okay, so this is just, it's an academic exercise, is what it is right now.
Finding on cost.
And then, if you would, please, come up with a cost of what's gonna cost the city, not just for the mailing, but for all the processing and everything else too. And also, maybe just as an aside, include that other SDI tract. It's potential, so. It's actually a denser area that's constructed right now, so it's right adjacent to a denser area that's constructed.
Where's the street that's in that other SU that we pointed out?
North Loop,
No, I know North.
Hacienda,
Hacienda. North
Hacienda and,
Loop,
Poppy,
And,
not Poppy, the hell is that? Anyway,
Jim, would you like to include the 3 SBI tracks in the second community?
no, not right now, I don't wanna discuss second community, I just wanna concentrate on First Community. There's so little construction out there, I don't wanna, I personally wouldn't wanna start doing anything out there. I know there's a lot of SDI property out there. But anyway, so that's that, on to discussion item number 3, my God, this thing.
That's an action item, sorry. That's closed.
It's closed. They're gonna look at all, or they're gonna target all of them.
But we'll bring it back while the ordinance is being finalized by the council. We'll bring this back.
Because once the ordinance is finalized, we're gonna have to do a public hearing on all this. To actually rezone. All right, draft or a cannabis buffer amendment. Staff, you are up again.
So this is just a quick recommendation that was brought forth from last planning commission meeting. This is something that staff came up with. It's basically saying sorry, let me back up real quick. So this is for the cannabis buffer that is adjacent to ORA zone, which currently I'm not even sure if there's a house in the ORA zone, but this would reduce that 200-foot cannabis buffer to 40 feet as given direction by the planning commission last planning commission meeting. So the draft ordinance says it shall be no closer than 200 feet of any residential zone parcel in the city with the exception of ORA zone, where the cannabis business shall be no closer than 40 feet unless there's an existing house within 1,000 feet. In that case, the cannabis business shall be no closer than 200 feet, including any non-legal conforming residential uses as of the date of the cannabis business permit is issued. And that's the way it is currently. So the black is the current, and then
Red was the first edit, blue was the second edit.
Yep. So this is the recommendation from staff to change the ordinance.
Commissioners? Yes, sir. Anything? Nothing on it? Nothing on this? Let's see, okay. Okay, I don't have anything either, so I'm gonna let the public speak. If anybody has anything on this? This is pretty mundane.
Christy Munt, I think it's pretty easy to understand and something that we need to do, especially if there are no houses within, mostly ORA, there's no houses anywhere close to them. And I just believe that reducing that 160 feet is going to give the businesses an opportunity to produce more tax revenue for the city. My
What?
opinion.
Great. Anybody else from the public?
May I approach? Track.
We've seen that. Isn't that the same map you gave before?
You gentlemen seen the encroachment on the maps?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Give it to, Secretary, please. While he's saying that, I wanna make a comment. We need to put something in there that, if anybody does construct within that 1,000 feet, they need to be informed that there's only a 40-foot buffer. They need to be informed.
And I think we need to do a broader mailing, because last time,
No, there's no mailing required on this.
they don't have to be notified.
No, we're just reducing the buffer zone. And it's all empty area right now.
Okay, no.
If, the thing about it is, if there is an existing house within 1,000 feet of that property, the cannabis property, then, it will go back to the original 200 feet, okay?
Nothing there.
Well, this is not just one section, this is not one area, this is the entire M1, M2 area that sits within the RA zone. Yeah, I've seen this.
Sorry for the redundancy, Jim, I just wanted the other gentleman to
Yeah, we had discussed this.
see the encroachments.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so the example before you is not particularly ORA, it's an example. I'm trying to give you an illustration, an example of what approximately 200 feet encroachment would look like. On that particular property, although it's not ORA, it changes the floor area for the industrial use of cannabis several 100,000 square feet of potential floor area. Now, some of the more creative engineers and land planners can mitigate some of that loss by developing the retention basins or other industrial uses in that setback area. But the best practice, if there's no negative impact, would be to eliminate the setback. We've made the suggestion that 15 feet, 25 feet, 20 feet, 26 feet, which is typically the fire safety access, I believe, is 26 feet. I can't even imagine any argument for 40 feet. I think I'd make the recommendation that you consider either 26, which is the fire access, maybe 30, there's no need for 40. That's our recommendation. Mr. Macedonia, you know, you looked out to the northeast and there's nobody in hundreds of miles to the northeast. About a mile away, there's houses to the
You
south.
talking about this one?
When we were out at Lindbergh.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
And so there's really not gonna be a negative impact to anybody, other than possibly right there at Poppy, looking north. And so, but because there's homes there, I think the 200 feet would apply. And just as an administrative point, I think the 1,000 feet is in excess of the existing ordinance. So I think the existing ordinance is 200 feet, and maybe that should be 200 feet. Because if you say 1,000 feet, then that's actually more than R1. So maybe you want to do that one at 200 feet, and then we recommend the setback at 26 or possibly 30. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else from the public? Commissioners?
I'm sorry, I need to reiterate what I said last meeting. I'm hearing the conversation in the city council where the public was saying 200 feet and they finally settled on 200 feet. I hear what DJ's saying, I think it's a very valid argument, but I really think that this is something we need to think about, the trust that we're building with our residents. We said it one way and now we've got a reason to change it to something else. How many times in the future are you gonna change it around something else after the citizens have had their say? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point.
Roger Million. I think, it really isn't changing anything when it comes to residential. If there is a house, it's keeping that 200-foot distance. I think it's more talking about
Correct,
if it's
it's
an
only
ORA
for
zone.
ORA.
Right, if it's an ORA, then to reduce that setback and to allow something up to 40 feet. That's the new distance, setback distance, right?
Right, we're recommending, or it is recommended that we reduce it from 200 feet to 40.
Okay. For ORA zones and
For
residential.
RA only,
stays.
that is correct. For any other residential area, it is the 200 feet, period, end of discussion.
And then if it's still an ORA and if there's a house,
Within 1,000 foot of the property line, then
Still
it goes
remains
to 200.
Perfect, thank you very much.
So that's what was technically agreed to last meeting, so now we're changing our own story before we even get there.
Well, residential staying the same, that's not changing, just ORA.
Residential will never change.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I hear what you're saying, Jim. I get it now.
You get it?
If, then.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
You get it. What did you get?
No, yeah.
He understands where we're coming from right now. It's not gonna be, it's, yeah.
And I think Karen has.
It's not more than, it's if
You
then.
know, in a lot of times, we do this, we go to the city council, and everybody, is in
Well-
agreement, whatever the number is, whether it be, the parcel tax, and then a year later, or 6 months later, they wanna change it because it's too high, or that's too much distance, and, we need more clarity here, that when we say it's gonna be X, then it becomes X, and not change it because somebody, we have a lot of proponents in the audience that want it changed. We don't have a whole lot of people here from the general public that don't have any vested interest in any of this, who are saying, no, we don't want, last meeting, we had a couple, and we had the wife was very upset with the fact that cannabis was encroaching on their horse property. So, it's one of those things, are we gonna stay true to what we decide, or are we gonna change it? The more squeaking wheels we get, the faster we're gonna change it.
Chairman, sorry, if I could, give some clarification on that, just to give you, from point of view of staff, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is something as staff that I welcome and I encourage. I think one of the biggest mistakes we made as a city is we said, okay, we allowed cannabis in our city, or back then, medical marijuana, and that was it. And in all reality, if I'm gonna be 100% honest, we didn't know what we were doing. So at least we have the courage to say, hey, we made some mistakes, we can do better, we can change things. We're in a unique situation where
It's the public perception though, Joe, that everybody, that the council, and, we're feeding the council information, that they're always changing their mind. That first they say it should be this, and now they got a lot of pressure, they're gonna make it this. And the people, they say, what are you guys doing? Why are you doing this? You tell us one thing, and then later on you change it to something else.
And that's exactly what the state did with, especially after the adult use was approved by the citizens. They constantly started changing the rules, the regulations. Even after we approved our medical cannabis, there was a lot of, all of a sudden, new state agencies that popped up that have vested interest in cannabis because they see the potential money, potential revenue, potential tax revenue for them. So this is another situation. We're in a unique situation. I think it's a good thing for us to be able to stand back and say, hey, wait a minute. If you go and you stand out there on one of these M1 zones next to an ORA and you don't see anything for literally miles, maybe we don't need this 200-foot setback. And I would call it, and I could be the crazy one, I call it being pro-business. I call it listening to the people you want to bring to the city to bring us revenue, bring us growth that we desperately need so we can get off of this special tax. So I get what you're saying. It does look like we're flip-flopping, we're not consistent, we don't have a backbone. I look at it as us being willing to change, being humble enough to say, hey, we made a mistake, or we can do better. And that's, at least on the building side, that's the staff's point of view.
Question, this is gonna require a public hearing, correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. And from the public hearing, we'll do a resolution. one way or another to, city council, and they will either accept it, reject it, modify it. It's their purview, finally, on this.
Has to be, I think you're right.
Oh, that's the way it will be.
Yeah.
So,
Has to be.
all we're doing right now is directing staff to, I guess we're gonna notice another public hearing.
Yes,
But now we need to be in agreement first.
yes, right. And DJ pointed out that in many cases, the site plan can be prepared in a way where they're not gonna lose any building space.
Right.
And also, I wanna point out that a lot of, the zone districts change, they're separated by a street. So you have a 60-foot street, you basically eliminated any
Buffer.
problems, a buffer already, so.
Right.
So this might affect those, will affect those that abut, back up to. But again, I think in most cases, they are separated by a street, so.
And then fire access 26.
So, commission, what do we want to tell staff? Notice the public hearing?
I think we have to, we don't have.
Well, yeah, well, one way or another, it has to go to public hearing.
Yeah, it has to
Make
go
a
to
change.
public hearing.
We have to be in agreement to agree to public hearing to, propose a change. So, we in agreement?
I'm in agreement.
Done. All right. Notice the public hearing. Joe, I hope you're gonna fight at council for that too. Your statements here tonight were recorded.
Verbatim.
All right, the next discussion action item is, the brainchild of Commissioner Macedonio.
Why are
You have the
blaming
floor.
me? Why are you blaming me? What?
Because you're the one that brought it up.
Well, yeah, but, what can I tell you? Where is it?
There's no staff report.
Oh, okay, what happened? What
This is
happened?
all up to you.
Okay.
I would like for the future though, if any commissioner is going to, want to speak on a subject, they at least provide staff with something they can publish to the public.
Okay. I think we were at that time treading water. So basically, the things that I have here are all about the tiny homes, and the only thing that maybe, that I can discuss that would be new would be the idea of a separate ordinance. And I think we discussed that already, maybe.
You wanted to stop rezoning for.
Yeah, I think that we should, I think that we need to take into consideration the idea of rezoning every time. Because it costs money, for one thing, and the other thing is, it just like, we have plenty of area that is zoned correctly, it just may not be zoned correctly for the person that owns that land. So they want a zone change, and I think that we should, maybe moratorium is too strong, but I think that, we need to, slow down on the zone changes, just, the way we've been doing it, like every commission meeting, we're doing zone changes. So that's all I have to say, I'm sorry, should have been more windy.
You give points.
Okay,
That's it?
on that, I guess I'll open it up to the public.
Okay. Good evening again. I have some thoughts. Actually, I put a lot of time and effort into this specific subject matter. Last spring and summer, we developed a resource for your planning commission consideration regarding general plan updates and zone changes. In that document that was presented to you, we talked about giving some weighted priority to those properties that perhaps have the greatest potential for industrial use, those that would have water and power. And it was summarily dismissed. That was our opinion. Maybe you read it, I don't know. At some point, you made mention to staff to publish a calendar for when those zone changes would come forward, for a year, 3 year, 4 year. But however, the document itself was well thought out, took a lot of time to give all the consideration to the exact points that you're making. Why are we doing zone changes in areas that maybe are encroaching on residential neighborhoods? Why? All of that's discussed in the document, but yet it was summarily dismissed. So why don't you go back, my suggestion is possibly, read the document, take a look at it, and see if it has merit. It allows you to score projects in the city's jurisdiction where we have 47,000 empty desert lots with no identifiable use, and allows you to pick those areas that have the greatest potential for industrial use. And by the way, I'm not really an advocate of anyone else getting a zone change, because I've got mine. So I'm just being honest with you, and I'm altruistic in a sense, what's best for the city? And I stand here before you and tell you time and time again, we've provided those resources because we've given it our 35 years experience standing here and 100 years experience in my staff to give you some guidance. Not to mention the tens of thousands of folks that I've met with and done a needs analysis, why California City and what they're looking for. So with a lot of tremendous resources available to you, it's been summarily dismissed. Take a look at it, maybe you'll find something worth looking at or identifying with in the document. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll do that. Rick Warren. Well, we also had a learning curve here in the last year, you know, how many you can have, how many times a year you can make any type of adjustment. I gotta agree, you guys just did 165 lot zone changes. You know, there is plenty of property out there to develop for that particular use at this time. A moratorium, maybe use that could be a strong, but the reality is, there's enough property now. Let's see them actually develop. There's a lot of vacant land for sale. Property values on those things have dropped tremendously. Last council meeting, they're gonna have a special meeting coming up, 1st December, over at the Arts Building, because 5 out of 11 producers are having financial trouble. They're asking the city for help. So you know what, if we keep just changing the zone for that particular use, we need to look at other uses. This tiny home use is a good instance of looking for other ways to create income. But 165 properties recently rezoned, and most of that is all for this M1, M2 type stuff, and most of the areas do not have utilities. That needs to be developed first. Talking about infill in the local community about houses, gotta do the same with this. If it's a legitimate one, make a special exception, but 165 lots recently zoned shows the city is moving, bend over backwards for these people. These people need to come to the table and start developing what they have. Thank you.
When did you say this meeting was gonna be?
I believe it's the 14th of January. You might want to check with the mayor to verify. And again, 5 out of the 11 current producing companies are asking for city help to reduce the cost or the fees or something in that direction. I don't have full detail, but there was a special meeting with the mayor, the city manager, and the cannabis people. The cannabis companies are having trouble.
Thank you. Check on that.
Yeah, January 14th is a council meeting. I believe it might be the 16th, which is a Thursday.
Yeah, there was something like that.
I'll double check with the city manager. I'm sure there's a lot of people interested in going to the meeting. So basically, maybe I can rephrase your moratorium.
Yes,
Let me just give it a shot.
Yeah.
So basically, what we want to do is, we've got plenty of M1, M2 out there now. I'm not going to say we won't look at it. We'll look at it, but it's probably unlikely that we'll approve a zone change. You know, I agree. There's so much space out there right now that's been rezoned by this commission to M1, M2, that they need to buy within the area and develop that. I agree. So maybe that's what you're looking at.
Yes, I like it.
Okay, so I don't see where that really needs to be an action item, to be honest with you, but just basically, we're gonna take a review of any rezoning outside of the current areas.
Is that just for M1, or does that count for like commercial, or,
No, commercial is different, I mean, M1,
so only for M1?
yeah, just, well, M1 ostensibly for cannabis, but they'll say that it's not. And we technically have to look at it. They'll say that it's not currently for cannabis development. And so we can't just call them a liar, but we know that they're probably not telling the truth down the line, so.
Pretty straightforward.
So with the current, we do have plenty of areas right now and we are looking at one final city rezone, but that may not happen either, so. We may just leave it alone.
Yeah, there is some squaring off to do, so that will be.
Yeah, I don't know if we really need to, I mean, it's beneficial, but, if we're going to hold fast, maybe we wanna just pump the brakes on that a little bit.
Setbacks might relieve that.
We're not ready to go yet. Stop backing up, we got another item to go.
Yes, we're ready for it.
All right, final item, information only for council approval. Staff,
Yes, you discussed ADUs at your last meeting. What's happened since then is our city attorney's office has prepared a draft ordinance. They're bringing it to the council, I believe, in January. And I believe January 15th. 14th. And they're calling it an urgency ordinance because of the state law. Staff's position is that if we're out of sync with the state law, we're not gonna go to jail. It happens all the time, but that's neither here nor there. The point is the council is gonna consider the new ADU ordinance, which will be based on the state law. And then, once they adopt it, they will send it to the planning commission. So you'll have an opportunity, it's kind of the backwards process. You'll have an opportunity to input, and you might want to refine it and add additional items, but clearly you're not going to change anything that the state has mandated. And so we're looking at, and we sent you a draft that came from our attorney's office for information. That's it.
okay, commissioners, anything on this?
No,
Oh, I got a
nothing for me.
bunch. No, I got a couple on this one. The attorney states in D4, I think it is, 65852.2 D4, that there is an urgency. I disagree, there is no urgency to create an ordinance prior to January 1 January 2020. Under the third whereas, that's where it is, under findings. It says, whereas to preserve what limited authority the city has remaining to regulate ADUs, it is desirable that the city update its laws consistent with the law as it will be in effect January 1, 2020. AB 68, which is what he's referring to, actually includes many of these bills that are up there as well, but basically it all falls under AB 68. And what it actually says is, section 6582.2 Delta 4, it says, as the latter part of that paragraph, if a local agency has an existing accessory dwelling unit ordinance that fails to meet the requirements of this subdivision, that ordinance shall be null and void, and that agency shall thereafter apply the standards established in this subdivision for the approval of accessory dwelling units, unless and until the agency adopts an ordinance that complies with the section. We don't have to create a new ordinance right at this moment, okay? We're gonna fall under state law. And reading this, whatever you thought, throw it out the window. Because there's some seriously, I don't like it, but it allows you to do all kinds of things with ADUs if you read this law. And then they do a this is just a commentary here, but they do a legislative, council's digest in the front, tells you kind of what the changes are. And you read through 4 different iterations of the same damn, code, until you get to the last page where they tell you, oh, by the way, this change incorporated these bills. This change incorporated these bills. Why they didn't tell you that up front, so I didn't have to look through them all, is beyond my reasoning. I don't understand it. But anyway, there's no urgency for this. So I don't see why we're calling it an urgency ordinance. It's just an ordinance that we have to comply with. We must send it to DCH and get their approval on it. And if they don't like it, they kick it back, then we have, I think, 60 days to rewrite it and get it back to them again. So there's already a process in here of what we have to do with the ordinance. The urgency I don't see. But anyway, that's me. Anyway, okay, so anybody from the public want to talk about this?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'll refer you back to draft ordinance on a separate matter where we actually simply and exclusively define an ADU in the tiny home ordinance. Not to mix it, not to confuse it, but simply because there will be those that have a question about an ADU. We're simply creating a definition for the ADU. Residential structure on a permanent foundation, independent living quarters, designed as permanent year-round residence for one household. There must be an existing single-family dwelling on the parcel where ADU will be built in place. So therefore, it's not commingling the two subjects. It's simply identifying the difference between
But
ADU.
AB 68 addresses ADUs only, not tiny homes.
And all I'm saying to you is that it's also in our draft ordinance only as a reference.
Yeah, their definitions are identical to yours.
Okay.
So, and they also identify a junior ADU and.
I didn't want to hear nonsense that, oh, it's commingled, it's not at all. It's simply.
No, it's just a definition.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate that you read all that, so I didn't have to.
25 flipping pages, all saying the same damn thing. Anybody else from the public? Okay, if you want some fun bathroom reading, AB 68. Okay, so we are done with most of it. Now we go to the fun part. Yeah, the almost there part. Commissioner items and comments. This portion of the meeting is reserved for planning commissioners to present information, announcements, and items that have come to their attention. Short staff responses may be appropriate. The planning commission will take no formal action. A planning commissioner may request to calendar an item for consideration at a future meeting or refer an item to staff. Why is planning project list on there as an item to bring up?
We've been doing it monthly.
Oh, yeah, let's just read items. Okay, Commissioner Trump,
I have nothing.
Commissioner Macedonia.
No.
Really? Good. I got a few things.
I thought you would.
All right. Since council failed to provide the commission with our final member, the process to fill the vacancy has been extended to 3 January 2020. For those of you who wish to apply, please get with Denise. She will tell you how to do it. Soon after 3 January, interviews will be conducted by Mayor McGuire, Councilman Paris, our own Matt, and Sean. If you could bring up the list of all the bills again, real quick. All right, right there. AB 671, for those of you that are interested, AB 671 has to do with the housing element and requires the state to provide a listing on its website prior to 31 December 2020. We do need to review that because the housing element is going to need to be revised here very shortly. If not, we're already late. AB 670 has to do with construction of affordable accessory dwelling units. We might ask the city attorney to see what this might have to do with the planning commission, but ostensibly reading it, I don't see where it affects us much. AB 587 refers to the sale of ADUs separate from the main unit with certain exemptions. basically, if you have an ADU on your property, you can't sell it separate from the house. Or if you have a junior ADU within your property, because that's what a junior ADU is, you can't sell that either. So you can't sell your garage and live in the house. There are certain exemptions for welfare exemptions or those nonprofits and stuff like that. There are allowances for that in there, but if you want to read it, you can read that stuff. Okay, this next comment or statement or series of statements is not going to make me any friends.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
On number 7, what does it mean that the agencies cannot impose fees on ADUs under 700? No fees at all, or?
I did not research that. That would probably be a question you could ask Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, so you can't impose any impact fees, school fees, property tax fees, those kind of things, on the building permit part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no impact fees, connection fees, none of that.
Okay. All right, so now it comes to the part that's not going to make me any friends. It saddens me to think that people in our community must refer to name calling when they feel that they or their advice is being ignored. This commission and the planning staff are working hard to ensure that the city moves forward. But we do not have to move forward at light speed. Moving forward too fast may put the city in a position similar to that when it adopted cannabis. Feeling like you are being ignored certainly doesn't give one cause to go to others to force their will upon this commission. I am not aware of any requirement for this commission to take direction from a subordinate to the city manager. Rather, we are an independent entity who reports only to the city council. By that same token, we do not take direction from any individual council member or the mayor. Our direction, should the council decide to do so, comes from the council as a whole. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Good night, folks.
Thank you.
My notes from the council meeting say that it was January 16, but it wasn't set in stone yet. January 16, 6:30 with the cannabis.
Oh, okay.
But it's not,
I'll double check.
I don't think Anna set it in stone yet, I think.
Okay, I'll double check, but thank you very much.